Dawn broke cold over Montana, January 1877. Wind cut through Silas Drummond's coat as he checked Silver Creek. Solid ice, third week running. The windmill groaned wrong, labored. His breath clouded white. Coffee steam rose from the tin cup in his calloused hand, the only warmth for miles. Sunday service at Brennan Crossroads. He stood on church steps while the congregation flowed past like water around a stone. Victor Caldwell, bank president in his tailored wool suit, hammered a legal notice onto the wooden door, loud, deliberate strikes echoing across the square. 90 days, Drummond, that's mercy. The paper flapped. Foreclosure notice. Women averted their eyes, men studied their boots. Silas walked away, jaw set toward the creek where something dark stained the snow. A woman's body, half buried, arrow shaft jutting from her side, fletching frozen stiff. Apache beadwork on torn dress. She moaned, "There, it hurts." Her hand clutched silver, a locket. She whispered through cracked lips, "Your wife had a sister." Silas carried her inside, boots leaving mud-tracked snow across the plank floor. She weighed nothing, fever-light, bones sharp beneath the torn fabric. He laid her on the bed where Mary had died 3 years past, the quilt still smelling faintly of lavender soap his wife had made that final summer. His hands shook as he cut away the dress. The arrow wound gaped, edges blackened. Infection had set deep, radiating red lines up her ribs. He'd seen wounds like this in the Indian Wars. Men died screaming within days. Water from the pump, cold enough to sting, clean cloth torn from an old shirt. He worked methodically, the way the army surgeon had taught him at Fort Laramie. Talking helped, kept the silence from pressing too close. "You're safe now. Whoever did this, they're not getting near you." The woman, Nayland, she'd gasped before passing out, didn't respond. Her breathing came shallow, rapid. Fever sweat beaded her forehead. The locket lay on the nightstand where he'd set it. He pried it open with thumbnail, careful not to break the delicate hinge. Two girls stared back from the faded photograph, maybe 10 and 12 years old. One white, one Apache. The white girl had eyes he'd known for 15 years, eyes that had closed forever in this very bed while he held her hand and prayed uselessly. Mary. His coffee went cold in the cup. Outside, the windmill groaned its labored song. Ice shifted on Silver Creek with sounds like distant thunder. He picked up the branding iron from where it leaned against the stone fireplace. Heavy, cold. The D mark he'd commissioned the year they married, planning to expand the herd, build something lasting. She'd never lived to see it used. "Your sister," he said to the photograph. "Why didn't you tell me?" The wind answered, rattling the shutters. Nellen convulsed once, back arching. He dropped the iron, grabbed her shoulders. Her skin burned beneath his palms. She screamed words in Apache he couldn't understand, then went limp. When he checked the arrow wound again, fresh blood seeped through the bandage. The arrow tip, he'd set it aside after cutting it free, caught lamplight. He examined it closer now, squinting, filed smooth, not a hunting arrow, no barbs, no rough napping. Someone had shaped this specifically so it could be pulled clean through flesh. This wasn't a random attack. The land office smelled of paper and ink, wax seals, and tobacco. Ruth Osborne sat behind the counter, wire-rimmed spectacles perched on her narrow nose, copying entries into the territorial registry with careful strokes. She looked up when Silas entered, snow melting from his shoulders. "Mr. Drummond, you're out early." "Need to see my water rights deed, the original filing." Her pen paused mid-stroke. "Is there a problem?" "Just want to verify something." Ruth set down the pen, wiped her hands on her apron. She moved to the filing cabinets that lined the west wall, fingers finding the right drawer without hesitation. She'd been here 20 years, since before her husband died, since before Caldwell bought the bank and foreclosed on half the territory. She pulled the folder, laid it on the counter. Silas studied the document. Filed 1863, when Montana was still wild and the war was bleeding the nation dry. His signature, younger hand, but unmistakably his. Water rights to Silver Creek, perpetual, surveyed and sealed. "This is the original?" "That's what's on file." Ruth adjusted her spectacles. "But Mr. Drummond..." She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "When did you last see this, the actual paper?" "Not since I filed it. Never had cause." She opened the registry book, traced a finger down the carbon copy entries. Her finger stopped. She frowned, leaned closer. "The signature looks different." Silas felt cold that had nothing to do with January wind. The door swung open. Victor Caldwell stepped inside, cigar smoke trailing him like a ghost. His boots, expensive leather, polished, rang loud on the wood floor. "Drummond, Surprised you're not packing?" Silas said nothing. Ruth closed the registry quickly. Too quickly. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. He crossed to the counter, took the deed from Silas's hands without asking, examined it, smiled. "Water rights. Shame about Silver Creek drying up. No water, no cattle. Basic economics." He set the deed down, tapped ash from his cigar onto the floor Ruth had swept that morning. 90 days, clock's ticking. He left, door banging shut behind him. Ruth waited until his footsteps faded. Then she reopened the registry, pulled a magnifying glass from her desk drawer. "Mr. Drummond," she whispered, tracing the carbon copy signature. "When did you last actually see this document? Because the ink on this signature—" She looked up, eyes grave behind spectacle glass. "It bled through from a stamp dated 3 months after you supposedly transferred your rights." Doc Simmons smelled of carbolic and whiskey, his leather bag worn smooth from 40 years of frontier medicine. He knelt beside the bed where Nayland thrashed, skin burning beneath his examining fingers. "Arrow's been in 2 days before you found her, maybe 3. He probed the wound. She screamed, a sound that made Silas's jaw clench. Poison, maybe, or just rot setting in. Silas held her shoulders down. Her muscles were iron-hard beneath fever-thin skin. "Can you save her?" Doc pulled instruments from his bag, scalpel, forceps, needle, and catgut thread. The metal clinked against the porcelain wash basin. "Don't know yet. Infection's deep, spreading." He worked in silence. Blood soaked the towels Silas had laid beneath her. The room filled with the copper smell of it, mixed with the sharper tang of carbolic. Nayland's eyes rolled back. She muttered in Apache, long strings of words that rose and fell like song. "That's a death chant," Doc said quietly, not looking up from his stitching. "She thinks she's dying. She's not. Might not be up to us." Doc finished, bandaged the wound with clean linen. He washed his hands in the basin, pink water swirling. "Morphine's on the table. Small doses. Keep her comfortable." He packed his bag, leather creaking. "And Silas, folks are talking. Indian woman at your place. Caldwell's been spreading stories." "What kind of stories?" "That you've gone soft. That you're harboring." Doc paused at the door. "Just be careful. Victor's got the town council in his pocket. They're looking for reasons to move against you." The door closed. Wind rattled the windows. Silas sat in the chair beside the bed, the one he'd occupied during Mary's final weeks. 3 years hadn't dulled the memory. Her hand in his, growing colder by the hour, her breathing shallow until it simply stopped. Nayland's hand found his now, ice cold despite the fever. Her eyes opened, clear for just a moment. "Sister," she whispered. "Mary. My sister." Then the fever claimed her again, and she screamed. Outside, the windmill groaned. Ice on Silver Creek shifted with sounds like breaking bones. The branding iron still leaned against the fireplace, catching firelight, the D mark glowing dull red in reflection. Mary's locket sat on the nightstand. 2 girls, 1 white, 1 Apache sisters. Why hadn't she told him? Nayland convulsed. Her back arched. Silas grabbed the morphine bottle, measured a careful dose, got it between her lips. She swallowed, coughed. Slowly, her thrashing eased. He held her hand through the long night. The fire burned low. Snow began to fall outside, soft against the windows. Near dawn, hoofbeats approached, multiple riders. Silas reached for his rifle. Sunday morning, the congregation gathered in the winter pale light, breath clouding white. Silas stood at the edge, hat in hand, having left Nayland with Ezra's wife watching over her. Father Hennessy was mid-sermon when Caldwell arrived. He didn't enter the church. Instead, he climbed the steps, turned to face the crowd spilling out after the service ended. His voice carried across the square. "Folks, I hate to interrupt the Lord's Day, but we've got a situation." Heads turned. The murmuring began. Caldwell held up a paper, yellowed, official-looking. "This here's a wanted notice. Came through Territorial Marshal's office 3 days back." He unrolled it. A crude sketch. Apache woman, distinctive scar on her left cheek, Nayland's scar. Wanted for horse theft in 3 territories, last seen near Fort Benton. Caldwell's eyes found Silas in the crowd, and currently harbored at the Drummond Ranch. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Silas stepped forward, boots crunching on frozen ground. "She's wounded, needs medical care. She's a criminal." Caldwell's smile was thin as razor wire. "Or are you saying the Territorial Marshal's wrong?" Silence. Father Hennessy descended the church steps, cassock rustling. Victor, this could be any... It's her, Caldwell cut him off. Doc Simmons confirmed the scar when he visited yesterday, sent me word this morning. Silas felt rage bloom hot in his chest. Doc had betrayed him. The law says a wanted person should be turned over to proper authorities, Caldwell continued. He folded the poster, tucked it inside his coat. Unless, of course, Mr. Drummond wants to make this easier on everyone. Easier how? Sign over the deed. Voluntary transfer. I'll pay a fair price. More than fair, considering that creek of yours is bone dry. You take the money, relocate somewhere less complicated, and I'll forget about the fugitive you're hiding. The pieces fell into place. This wasn't about water rights or drought. It was leverage. Caldwell had orchestrated all of it. The foreclosure notice, the wanted poster, maybe even Nolan's arrow wound. Think it over, Caldwell said, voice carrying to every ear. 90 days is generous, but harboring a fugitive? Sheriff could make that timeline considerably shorter. He descended the steps, paused beside Silas, whispered, low enough only Silas could hear. Could be 90 minutes instead of 90 days. Your choice. The congregation dispersed, murmuring. Women pulled children close. Men studied the ground. Only Father Hennessy remained, hand on Silas's shoulder. Son, there's always... No. Silas's voice was flat, final. There's not. He walked away, toward his horse. Toward the ranch, where a woman who might be his sister-in-law lay dying while the whole territory decided she was a criminal. Behind him, Caldwell lit a cigar. Smoke rose into the cold January air. The forge roared, orange light painting the walls. Ezra Polk hammered iron on the anvil, rhythmic strikes that rang like church bells, each impact testing truth from metal. Sparks flew with every blow. Silas stood in the doorway, broken harness in hand. The leather had snapped during the ride back from church, reins giving way on the frozen road. Ezra looked up, sweat gleaming on his weathered face despite the January cold. He was 62, beard going white, but his arms were still oak strong from decades at the forge. Heard about Sunday, he said, not stopping his work. Silas said nothing, set the harness on the workbench. Ezra plunged the iron into water. Steam hissed, filling the shop with the smell of hot metal and coal smoke. Served with you in '68, Ezra said, examining the harness. Fought Lakota side by side at Rosebud Creek. Remember that? I remember. Then you remember I don't break easy. He selected tools, leather punch, rivets, heavy thread. And I don't forget my brothers. He worked the leather with practiced hands, fingers finding weak points, reinforcing what had torn. Outside, wind rattled the shop's tin roof. This one's free, Ezra said. Ezra, I can't... You can. The blacksmith tested the repair, pulled hard. It held. We old soldiers stick together. That bond don't break over town gossip. He hung the harness on a peg, turned back to his forge, stoked the coals until they glowed white-hot. Victor Caldwell's a coward, Ezra said, voice low. Hides behind lawyers and hired men, but cowards make mistakes. Silas stepped closer. The forge's heat pressed against his face. My nephew works Caldwell's land survey crew, Ezra continued, glancing at the door. Says they've been surveying upstream, past your property line, in January. Surveying what? That's what's curious. Why survey frozen ground? Ezra pulled iron from the coals, examined its color. And why bring dynamite crates for spring construction? What construction? Hope sparked dangerous in Silas's chest. There's more, Ezra said. Creek didn't dry natural. My nephew saw something upstream. Wouldn't say what, just that it didn't look right. He's scared. Caldwell's got him under contract, can't afford to lose the work. He plunged the iron back into water. Steam erupted. But he'll talk to you, tonight, after his shift. Meet him at the old line shack past Miller's Ridge. Silas gripped the repaired harness. The leather was warm from Ezra's work, supple and strong. Why are you helping me? Ezra met his eyes. Because Mary used to bring me apple pie every harvest. Because you pulled me out of that ravine at Rosebud, when the Lakota had me pinned. Because... He paused. Because right is right, Silas. And Caldwell's dead wrong. The anvil rang as Ezra struck it once. Sharp, clear, truth test sound. The oil lamp flickered on Ruth Osborne's desk, throwing shadows across the land office walls. Midnight. The building creaked in the wind, old timber settling. She spread the documents across her workspace. Registry book, carbon copies, original deed filings. Her late husband's magnifying glass caught lamplight as she traced entries line by line. Samuel had been a locksmith before Caldwell foreclosed on their shop, taught her how mechanisms worked, how locks opened, how nothing was ever quite as secure as people believed. He'd died within a year of losing the shop. Broken heart, Doc Simmons said. But Ruth knew better. Broken spirit. She wouldn't let it happen to Silas. The registry book showed Drummond's water rights filed in 1863. Original deed, signed and notarized. Then in 1876, last March, a transfer notation. Rights conveyed to V. Caldwell, compensation received. She pulled the carbon copy from the file cabinet, held it to the light. There. The ink had bled through the tissue paper, showing the pressure points where pen had pressed. But the bleed pattern was wrong, too uniform, too perfect. She laid Silas's signature from an 1873 land survey report beside the 1876 transfer. Different pen pressure entirely. The 73 signature bore down hard on downstrokes, Silas's hand favoring his right side, old war injury making him press harder. The 76 signature was smooth even. Someone else had signed his name. Ruth's hands shook as she made careful notes. Dates, registry numbers, page references, footsteps outside. She froze. The steps passed, fading toward the saloon 2 buildings down. She exhaled, tucked the notes into her corset, looked at the vault door behind her desk. Massive iron, combination lock that supposedly only Caldwell knew. But Samuel had opened safes for the previous bank owner, had shown her the trick of it, how manufacturers use default combinations, how few people ever change them. She approached the vault, listened at the door, silence. Her fingers found the dial, started with the manufacturer's default, 10, 20, 30, nothing. She tried the bank's founding year, 18 to 58. Click. The vault door swung open. Inside, stacks of deeds, bonds, cash. She found the folder marked Drummond Silas, Water Rights, Silver Creek. The original deed, dated 1863, signature clearly Silas's, heavy downstrokes, slight rightward lean, but underneath it, another document, transfer agreement dated March 1876, different ink, wrong notary seal. The territorial registrar had changed in 1875, but this deed bore the old seal. Forgery. Obvious once you knew to look. She tucked it into her corset beside the notes, started to close the vault, then saw the leather folder. Railroad contracts, confidential. Her hand hesitated. Outside, footsteps again, closer this time. She grabbed the folder, thrust it inside her coat, closed the vault, spun the dial. The doorknob rattled. Ruth doused the lamp, pressed herself against the wall behind the filing cabinet. Through the window, a shadow passed. Victor Caldwell's distinctive profile, tall, straight-backed, cigar glowing. He tried the door, locked. Probably wind, he muttered, moving on. Ruth waited 10 minutes, 20. Finally slipped out the back door into the January night, evidence pressed against her ribs. The moon was full. Silver Creek, what remained of it, gleamed like frozen bone in the distance. The town council arrived mid-morning in a rented buggy. Mayor Webb, Judge Carstairs, Sheriff Moss. Their boots tracked slush across Silas's porch as he stood in the doorway, blocking entrance. Mr. Drummond, Mayor Webb said, hat in hand. Appreciate a word inside. Say what you need to say here. From upstairs, Nayland moaned. The fever had spiked again at dawn, her thrashing so violent Silas had tied soft cloth around the bedpost so she wouldn't hurt herself. Judge Carstairs cleared his throat. It's about the woman you're harboring. She's wounded. She stays. She's wanted, Sheriff Moss said, hand resting on his gun belt. Territorial law says, I know what the law says. Silas stepped aside. Let them enter. The 3 men filled his small parlor, smelling of tobacco and wet wool. Mayor Webb's eyes went to the rifle leaning by the fireplace. Judge Carstairs studied the branding iron still propped against the stones. Coffee? Silas asked, not meaning it. This isn't a social call. Judge Carstairs pulled papers from his coat. We've received concerns about your judgment. Financial strain, now this situation. Her name's Nayland. The woman, the judge continued, is affecting your ability to think clearly. Upstairs, Nayland screamed. The sound cut through the floorboards like a knife. Silas climbed the stairs. The 3 men followed without invitation. Nayland thrashed on the bed, blankets soaked with fever sweat. Her eyes rolled white. Words poured from her in Apache. Fast, desperate, the cadence of prayer or prophecy. Jesus, Mayor Webb whispered. Doc Simmons had changed the bandages that morning. The wound was worse, red lines spreading like lightning across her ribs. The smell of infection filled the room, sweet and rotten. She needs a hospital, Sheriff Moss said. Nearest one's in Helena. 3-day ride. She wouldn't survive. Then maybe... The sheriff stopped. Everyone heard what he didn't say. Maybe she's not meant to. Silas descended back to the parlor, laid Ruth's notes on the table, the ones she'd pressed into his hand after church, telling him to present them to the council. This is proof Caldwell forged my deed. Compare the signatures. Different pen pressure, wrong notary seal, ink bleed that shows backdating. Judge Carstairs barely glanced at it. Mr. Drummond, are you accusing our bank president of fraud? I'm showing you evidence. What you're showing is desperation. Mayor Webb shifted uncomfortably. Silas, we understand the pressure you're under. Financial troubles. Now this woman, her name is Nellen. But conspiracy theories won't save your ranch. Sheriff Moss picked up the notes. This could be interpreted as clerical error. Registry mistakes happen. 7 mistakes? All favoring Caldwell? The judge stood. Without the original deed, which is legally filed in the bank's vault, this is speculation. Victor Caldwell's voice came from the doorway. Gentlemen? He'd let himself in, stood there in his tailored suit, snow melting from his shoulders, cigar smoke trailing. I apologize for the interruption, but I heard the council was visiting. Thought I should be present for any accusations. His smile was thin. Silas felt the trap closing. Mr. Drummond is under significant strain, Caldwell said, moving into the room like he owned it. Financial difficulties, foreclosure pending, and now he's harboring a wanted fugitive, compromising his judgment further. She's not... The posters from the territorial marshal, Caldwell cut in smoothly. Are you suggesting the marshal's office is also part of this... conspiracy? Silence. Upstairs, Nalen's screaming stopped. The sudden quiet was worse. Judge Carstairs gathered his papers. Mr. Drummond, the council has reviewed your concerns. We find no evidence of impropriety in the deed transfer. You didn't even look... The foreclosure proceeds as scheduled, 90 days. The judge moved toward the door. And regarding the woman, Sheriff Moss will be checking on her status. If she's well enough to travel, she'll need to answer those charges. They filed out. Mayor Webb paused, lowered his voice. Silas, let it go. Caldwell's got too much power. The door closed. Caldwell remained. Ash from his cigar drifted onto the floor. 90 days, he said. Unless you'd like to reconsider my offer. Silas's hand moved toward the rifle. I wouldn't. Caldwell's voice was soft. That would give the sheriff cause to act immediately. And then who'd care for your... patient? He left, door banging shut. Silas climbed the stairs. Nalen lay still, too still. Dawn came so gray light through frost-etched windows. Silas had dozed in the chair beside the bed, rifle across his lap. Nalen's breathing changed. He jolted awake. Her eyes were open, clear for the first time in days. Water, she rasped. He brought the tin cup, held it to her cracked lips. She drank, coughed, drank again. Her gaze found his face, studied it with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You have her eyes, she whispered. My sister's eyes. Silas set the cup down. Nalen. Mary. That was her name after she married you. Before, she was Little Sparrow. Nalen's hand found the locket on the nightstand, pressed it into his palm. Our mother was Crow, father a trapper named Winters. When Mary married you, she took the white name. Cut ties to protect you from what she was. The photograph. 2 girls, 1 white passing, 1 clearly Apache. This is her? His voice came rough. Yes, and me. Tears tracked down Nalen's fever-flushed cheeks. She died 3 winters past. The fever. I came to honor her grave, but... She touched her wound, winced. Caldwell's men found me at Silver Creek. They knew who I was, knew Mary had a sister. Her breathing quickened. They wanted the deed. Said Mary hid the original before she died. I refused to tell. They shot me, left me for dead. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. What deed? The water rights, true legal claim. Nalen gripped his hand. Mary discovered Caldwell's forgery 2 years before the fever took her. She hid proof where only family would understand, said, where water runs forever. Silas looked out the window. Silver Creek, frozen solid. Not forever, unless Mary's grave. The spring-fed well beside it, stone-lined and deep, the one that never froze, even in the bitterest cold. She told me, Nalen continued, if she died, I should find you. Give you the locket. Tell you the truth. Her grip tightened. I'm your sister now, Silas. That makes this family business. He couldn't speak. Grief and rage and hope tangled in his chest. There. It hurts. Nayland touched her wound again, but not as much as losing her twice. Once to death, once to secrets she kept to protect you. Outside, the windmill groaned. Different now, the groan of ice beginning to crack, spring coming, slow but inevitable. Your family, Silas said finally. That means you're staying, no matter what Caldwell threatens. The town? The town can go to hell. Nayland smiled. First real smile he'd seen from her, Mary's smile, crooked, fierce, unbroken. Help me stand, she said. If we're going to fight, I need to be on my feet. He helped her upright. She swayed, gripped the bedpost. The wound wept fresh blood through the bandages, but her jaw was set. Through the window, Silver Creek gleamed, still frozen, but along the banks, Silas could see darker patches where ice was beginning to thin. February was coming, then March, then spring. Afternoon sun slanted through the window, painting the floor gold. Nayland sat propped against pillows, color returning to her face. Needle and thread moved through the torn fabric of Silas's shirt, precise, tiny stitches that would hold stronger than the original seam. You don't have to, he said. I'm not an invalid. The needle flashed. And I'm not useless. He cleaned the branding iron by the fireplace, habit from 40 years of ranching. Wire brush scraping away rust, oilcloth burnishing the metal until the D mark gleamed. Nayland watched, set down her sewing. May I? He handed it to her. She tested its weight. Heavy, cold, balanced like a weapon. Mary never saw this used? Bought it the year we married. Planned to expand the herd, build something lasting. He poked the fire. Sparks rose like stars. Then she got sick. Nalene traced the D with her thumb. In our tongue, this shape, she drew a symbol in the air, swift and sure, means protector who stands alone. Silas's throat tightened. She would have been proud to carry this mark, Nayland said, to see the herd wearing it, to know what you built. Feels wrong now, she never got to see it. Then use it now, for her, Nayland handed the iron back. I'll help with spring branding, if you'll have me. If I can keep the ranch, we'll keep it, together. The word hung between them. We, family. Outside, the windmill's groan had changed. No longer the labored protest of frozen bearings, but something looser, the sound of ice beginning to crack. Silas hung the branding iron on its peg above the fireplace, the place Mary had wanted it, waiting for the day they'd use it together. When the calves come, he said, you'll help? I tracked elk through winter in the mountains, Nayland replied, picking up her sewing again. I can handle cattle. She finished the shirt, bit off the thread, shook it out. The tear was invisible now, reinforced with double stitching. Better than new, she said, handing it to him. He put it on. The fabric smelled of soap and wood smoke. Mary's soap, the last bar he had left. Thank you. Nayland nodded, stood carefully, testing her weight, winced, but didn't sit. I'm coming with you tonight, to meet Ezra's nephew. You're not strong enough. I tracked for my people 12 winters. You'll need me. She moved to the window, steadier now. Whatever Caldwell's hiding upstream, it's big enough to kill for. That means dangerous ground. You go alone, you're loud as a buffalo. Both of you are. Silas wanted to argue, saw the set of her jaw, Mary's stubbornness looking back at him. Can you ride? Better than I walk. Outside, hoofbeats approached. Ezra on his roan, saddlebags heavy. Silas opened the door. Brought supplies, Ezra said, dismounting. Food, ammunition, rope. If we're going upstream tonight, we'll need gear. Nayland appeared in the doorway. Ezra stopped, seeing her upright for the first time. Ma'am? Nayland. You're Mary's sister. Not a question. I am. Ezra nodded, as if this explained everything. Then your family. Welcome to the fight. They spread Ezra's rough map on the kitchen table, pencil lines showing Silver Creek's course upstream, past Drummond's northern boundary, into territorial land that should have been public access. My nephew says there's a structure here. Ezra's thick fingers stabbed the map 5 miles upstream. Logs, rocks, canvas, built sometime in December, right before the creek froze solid. A dam? Silas leaned closer. The kitchen smelled of coffee and gunpowder. Ezra had been cleaning his rifle. Crude, but effective. Snow's packed behind it. When thaw comes, if it's still there, water floods downstream, washes out your ranch. But right now, Ezra met his eyes. It's choking Silver Creek dry. Nayland traced the creek's path with her finger. Sabotage. Make it look natural. That's my thinking. Ezra pulled a folded paper from his vest. And there's more. Nephew found this near the site. Didn't know what it meant, but I do. He unfolded it. A supply receipt from Caldwell's warehouse. Dynamite. 20 crates. Signed out to Spring Road Construction. What roads? Silas demanded. Exactly. Ezra refolded the receipt carefully. My nephew's terrified. Caldwell's got him under contract. He talks, he loses his job. But he'll meet us tonight. Show us the dam, get us close enough to document it. Document how? Nayland asked. It'll be dark. Moon's near full, and I've got this. Ezra pulled out a small camera, folding bellows, brass fittings. Belonged to my brother. Takes photographs by moonlight if you expose long enough. Silas had seen cameras before. Union Army used them during the war to map Confederate positions. Evidence for court, Ezra explained. Can't deny a photograph. Caldwell owns the judge, Silas countered. He owns Judge Carstairs. Doesn't own the territorial marshal. Ezra tapped the map. We get proof. Ruth gets it to the marshal. Caldwell's done. Nayland moved to the window, studied the tree line, the distant ridge where smoke had risen that morning. His men patrol? 2, maybe 3. Armed. Nephew says they change shifts at midnight. Then we go at midnight, when they're changing, distracted. She turned back. I'll scout ahead. Signal if it's clear. Nayland, Silas started. I'm Apache. I move silent. You two? She smiled. You move like white men, loud. Ezra grinned. She's got Hayes grit, Silas. Mary would approve. They prepared as the sun set, rifles cleaned and loaded, dark clothes, rope, the camera packed careful in leather. Ezra's nephew would meet them at the old line shack at 11. As they mounted up, Nayland tested her wound, grimaced but nodded. Let's go get your proof. The moon rose full and bright. Silver Creek gleamed beneath it, ice still thick, but along the edges darker water showed where spring was beginning its slow work. In the distance, the smoke had stopped. Whatever Caldwell's men had been burning was gone now. They rode north into the February night, midnight. The forest smelled of pine resin and cold earth, snow melting in patches where the moon broke through branches. Their horses picked through deadfall, hooves muffled by pine needles. Ezra's nephew waited at the line shack. A boy, really, maybe 19, thin as a fence post. He jumped when they approached. Uncle Ezra. Easy, Tom. This is Silas Drummond and Nolan. Tom's eyes went to Nayland's Apache features, widened, then looked away, fear and shame mixing on his young face. Dam's a mile upstream, he whispered. Guards change shift in 10 minutes. That's your window. They left the horses tethered, moved on foot through the trees. Nayland led, silent as smoke, hand signaling stops every 50 yards. Once she froze, held up a fist. They dropped. Voices ahead. 2 men, cigarettes glowing red in the darkness. Supposed to blow it come March, one said. Flood the whole valley. Make it look natural. Drummond's place goes under? That's the idea. Then Caldwell buys the ruins cheap. Railroad pays him, we get our bonus. The voices faded downstream. Nayland waited 5 minutes, signaled forward. They reached the dam. It was bigger than Silas had imagined. Logs lashed with rope. Fresh rope, not weathered. Boulders wedged between trunks, canvas tarps covering the upstream face. Behind it, Silver Creek pooled, choked and swollen with snowmelt that should have been flowing free. Ice still held the surface, but beneath it, dark water pressed. Jesus, Ezra breathed. Tom pointed to crates stacked under a lean-to shelter. Dynamite. They're waiting for spring. Soon as the ice breaks, they'll blow it. Flood comes down like God's wrath. Nayland circled the structure, reading it like a tracker reads sign. Recent construction. 2 months, maybe less. See how the canvas hasn't weathered? And the rope, she touched it, still has warehouse smell. Tar and new hemp. Ezra set up the camera on its tripod. The moonlight was bright enough, barely. He opened the shutter, began the long exposure. Silas sketched the structure in his notebook. Dimensions, materials, the dynamite cache. Tom kept watch, rifle shaking in his hands. The camera shutter closed. Ezra checked the plate. Got it. Now let's... Who's there? Lantern light stabbed through the trees. Two guards, rifles raised. "Run!" Ezra shouted, but Nayland had already moved. Arrow knocked. She'd brought Silas's spare bow. Released. The arrow hit the lantern. Kerosene exploded. Flames erupted, blinding. Guards shouted. Rifle shots cracked through the night. Tom went down, clutching his leg. "Uncle!" Ezra grabbed the boy, hauled him up. They crashed through underbrush, moonlight and firelight mixing in chaos. Behind them, I saw his face. Drummond was here. Get word to Caldwell. They reached the horses. Tom was bleeding, bullet through his calf. Ezra bound it quick with torn shirt. "Can you ride?" "Have to." They mounted, galloped south through forest that seemed suddenly full of shouts and movement. A mile down, Nayland pulled up, listened. "No pursuit? Yet." Silas's heart hammered. "They saw us." "They saw you," Ezra corrected. "And they know you know." Tom groaned, leaning forward on his horse. Blood soaked through the bandage. "Doc Simmons," Silas said. "Now." They rode hard for Brennan Crossroads. Ruth waited until 2 in the morning. The town slept, saloon closed, streets empty save for wind pushing loose snow across frozen ruts. She'd made her decision after Silas left her the note at church. "Going upstream tonight. If something happens to me, get the original deed, whatever it takes, whatever it takes." The land office was dark. She unlocked it with her key, moved through shadows to the connecting door. The bank. Lockpicks slid from her sleeve. Samuel's tools, kept hidden 3 years since his death. He'd taught her the craft when times were lean, when they'd needed to open their own safe after losing the combination. The bank door opened, silent. Inside smelled of paper and ink, brass polish and old money. The vault loomed against the back wall, massive, iron-plated, combination lock gleaming. Her hands shook as she approached it, Samuel's voice in her memory. Most folks never change the manufacturer's default. Too lazy. Too sure of themselves. She tried the default. 10, 20, 30. Nothing. The bank's founding year, 18 to 58. Click. Tumbler falling into place. Click. Second tumbler. Click. Third. The vault door swung open on oiled hinges. Inside, the careful accounting of other people's lives. Deeds, bonds, mortgage papers, cash in neat stacks. She found Drummond's folder, Water Rights, Silver Creek. The original deed lay on top. 1863 filing, Silas's signature bold and clear, heavy downstrokes where his war-injured hand pressed harder. The notary seal was correct, the paper aged proper. Beneath it, the transfer agreement, March 1876. Different ink, bluer, fresher. Different paper, newer stock than 1863 would have been, and the notary seal was wrong. The territorial registrar had changed in 1875, but this deed bore the old seal. Forgery. Obvious once you knew to look. She tucked it inside her corset, the paper crackling against her ribs, started to close the vault, saw the leather folder, railroad contracts, confidential. Her hand hesitated. She'd already stolen a legal document. This was... Footsteps outside. She grabbed the folder, thrust it inside her coat, closed the vault, spun the dial. Through the window, Victor Caldwell's silhouette, tall and distinctive, cigar coal glowing. Ruth pressed herself behind the filing cabinet, barely breathing. Caldwell tried the bank door, locked. "Thought I heard something," he muttered. Paused, tried again. Ruth's heart hammered so loud she was certain he could hear it through the walls. Probably wind. His footsteps faded toward the hotel. She waited, counted to 100, then 200, finally slipped out the back door into the February night. In the alley, she opened the railroad folder by moonlight. Contract between Victor Caldwell and Union Pacific Railroad. Dated March 10th, 1876. 1 year ago, almost to the day. Upon acquisition of Silver Creek Water Route, Railroad agrees to pay Victor Caldwell sum of $15,000 for land procurement services and right-of-way easement. The contract was dated before Caldwell had started foreclosure proceedings. He'd planned this for a year, maybe longer, not opportunistic greed, calculated theft. She tucked the folder back inside her coat. The original deed pressed against her heart, evidence that could destroy a powerful man, or get her killed. Silver Creek gleamed in the distance, ice cracking audibly now. Spring was coming early this year. She walked home through empty streets, carrying proof that would either save Silas Drummond or doom them both. Pre-dawn. The rifle lay disassembled on the kitchen table. Receiver, barrel, trigger assembly. Oilcloth. Bullets lined up in neat rows, brass casings catching lamplight. Silas's hands moved with mechanical precision, cleaning, loading, preparing. Nolan descended the stairs, moving easier now. The wound had closed, fever gone, She paused in the doorway, seeing him. "What are you doing?" "Finishing this." "By killing him?" His hands didn't stop. Slide the bolt, check the action, load 5 rounds into the magazine. "Silas." She crossed the room. "I've killed men." That made him pause. "Raiders who burned our village when I was 16. Shot 3 of them myself. Watched them bleed out in the snow." She pulled a chair close, sat. "You know what it gave me?" He said nothing. "Nothing. My mother was still dead. Our winter stores still burned. All I had was empty hands and a weight I carry every day." "Caldwell murdered your sister." His voice came rough. "My wife. Stole my land, shot you, and left you to die in the snow." He loaded another round. "The law won't stop him. You heard the council. They're his, all of them. Then we make the law work anyway." "How?" The word came out harsh. "Ruth found evidence. They dismissed it. Ezra found the dam. They'll call us trespassers. We have nothing that matters to men who've already chosen sides. We have witnesses who haven't chosen yet." Nolan pulled the rifle barrel from his hands. Set it down. "My sister loved you because you weren't like the men who hurt us. You were steady. You didn't solve problems with bullets. You solved them with patience." "Patience got her killed." "No, Caldwell's greed killed her. And if you put a bullet in him, his greed wins anyway, because you become what he says you are, a dangerous man who can't be reasoned with." Silas's hands shook. He pressed them flat on the table. "I don't know any other way to protect what's ours. We gather everyone, force the town to sea. Spring brandings in 2 weeks, invite the whole territory, make Caldwell face witnesses he can't buy." Silas looked at her, Mary's eyes looking back. The same fierce certainty that had convinced him to leave Virginia, to come west, to build something good in hard country. "That's what she'd say," he admitted. "Isn't it?" "It is." Nolan stood, came around the table, put her hand on his shoulder, first real touch of affection between them. "My sister chose you because killing wasn't your answer. Don't let Caldwell take that from you, too." Outside, the windmill turned. The groan had changed entirely now, no longer protest, but rhythm, purpose. Silas began unloading the rifle, hands still shaking but moving with different intent now. "If we do this your way," he said, "and it doesn't work, then we run, take what we can carry and go somewhere Caldwell's name means nothing. I've been here 40 years, and you'll be dead if you face him alone with a gun." She was right. He knew it bone deep. He finished unloading, set the bullets back in their box, started reassembling the rifle. Not for murder now, but for protection. 2 weeks, Moiselle, he said. "We planned this right." Nolan nodded. "I'll ride to the neighboring ranches. Invite them personal. While I talk to Ruth and Ezra, coordinate evidence." He looked at her. "And we pray the town chooses right this time." "They will, because they'll see you standing, and standing matters." The sun was rising. Through the window, Silver Creek gleamed, ice breaking up in patches now, dark water showing through. The sound of it had changed too, no longer silence. The first whispers of flow, February bleeding into March, spring coming whether anyone was ready or not. The church basement smelled of lamp oil and old hymnals, damp stone and candle wax. 5 conspirators gathered around a rough-hewn table. Silas, Nayland, Ruth, Ezra, Father Hennessy. Ruth spread the stolen documents like cards in a poker game. Original deed, forged transfer, railroad contract. "This proves Caldwell planned the theft a year in advance," she said, finger tracing the contract date. "March 1876. He started foreclosure proceedings in April." Ezra added his photographs, moonlit images of the dam, grainy but clear. "And this proves sabotage. He choked the creek to create drought, then used the drought to justify foreclosure." Father Hennessy studied the evidence through wire-rimmed spectacles. At 68, his hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were sharp. "Damning. But the council's already dismissed your claims once." "Because it was private," Nayland said. 5 men in Silas's parlor. Easy to ignore. "So we make it public," Silas finished. "Spring branding. Invite everyone. Ranchers, townspeople, territorial officials. Present evidence before witnesses Caldwell can't threaten all at once." Ezra grinned. "Old tradition. Community gathering. Free beef. No one refuses." "He'll try to stop it," Ruth warned. "Let him try. That's proof of guilt." Silas looked around the table. "We send invitations this week. Personal visits to every ranch within 50 miles. Make it a celebration. I'll ride circuit, Nayland offered. Cover the northern ranches. I'll take the eastern spreads, Ezra said. Got cousins out that way. Ruth pulled a list from her satchel. I've been compiling names. Ranchers who've been hurt by Caldwell's lending practices. Families who've lost land. They'll come if they know it's about justice. Father Hennessy had been quiet, fingers steepled. Now he looked up. There's one more thing we need. Everyone turned. Authority. Someone Caldwell can't intimidate or buy. He pulled paper and pen from his cassock. I'm writing to Territorial Marshal Vickers. You know him? Silas asked. We served together. Different kind of service. I was chaplain, he was cavalry. But we've kept correspondence. Hennessy began writing, his script neat despite the tremor. If I mention irregularities in land office practices, specifically forgery and sabotage, he's obligated to investigate. Caldwell will know something's up if a marshal arrives, Ruth said. Not if the marshals comes to a community gathering, just another guest at the branding. Hennessy smiled. I'll invite him as my personal guest. Old friend visiting. Caldwell won't know until he arrives. Ezra laughed. Sneaky. I like it. Even God appreciates good tactics, Hennessy replied, signing the letter with a flourish. They clasped hands across the table. Old West Pact, sealed in the basement of a church that had stood through territorial wars and hard winters. 2 weeks, Silas said. We hold until then. And if Caldwell moves before? Ruth asked. Silence. Then Nayland. Then we fight, but we fight together. Outside, the sound reached them through thick stone walls, ice cracking, loud as rifle shots, Silver Creek breaking free. They climbed the stairs into dawnlight. The town was waking. Smoke from breakfast fires, the blacksmith's hammer beginning its morning rhythm, horses stamping in the livery. Brennan Crossroads looked the same as always, but something had shifted, the light maybe, or the air, the smell of it. Winter losing its grip, Silas walked toward the creek with Nellen, stood on the bank where he'd found her dying 6 weeks ago. The ice was breaking. Dark water rushed beneath it, ancient and patient, waiting 40 years to flow free again. She hid it in the well, Nayland said quietly. The deed. I'm certain now. We'll look after the branding. Don't want to tip our hand early. Agreed. She picked up a piece of broken ice, watched it melt in her palm. Silas? Yeah? Thank you. For not becoming a killer for her memory. He nodded, couldn't trust his voice. They stood together as the sun rose higher, brother and sister by law and choice, watching winter die and spring begin its slow birth. In 2 weeks, the whole territory would gather, and Victor Caldwell would face the one thing he'd never planned for, witnesses who couldn't be bought because they had nothing left to lose. May morning broke clear and warm. Silver Creek roared, full spring thaw, 40 years of memory restored. The sound of it carried across Drummond Ranch like vindication. 50 people gathered by mid-morning, then 70, then more. Wagons lined the fence rails. Children ran shrieking between corrals. Women laid pies and bread on plank tables. Men smoked and told lies about cattle and weather while eyeing the branding fire where Ezra stoked coals to white heat. The smell, singed hide, wood smoke, roasting beef, coffee strong enough to strip paint, spring grass and turned earth, honest sweat and honest work. Silas stood on his porch, watching them arrive. Nayland beside him, dressed in Mary's old riding clothes, looking strong despite the scar tissue still pink on her ribs. More than I expected, she said. Word spreads. Ranchers from 50 miles out, townsfolk who'd stayed quiet through winter but whose faces now showed something different. Not quite courage yet, but the beginning of it. Ruth arrived with Father Hennessy in his circuit wagon, and beside them, wearing a territorial Marshal star on his leather vest, Marshal Vickers, tall, weathered, cavalry bearing unmistakable. Caldwell stood near the gate, flanked by his 2 hired men. He'd come, couldn't refuse a public invitation without admitting fear. His suit was immaculate despite the dust, cigar clenched between teeth. Their eyes met across the gathering. Silas nodded once. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Ezra rang the anvil, church bell sound, calling order. The crowd quieted, turned. Silas descended from the porch. Nayland followed. He carried the branding iron. She carried a glass jar. They walked to the fire. The crowd parted. Thank you for coming, Silas began, voice steady, pitched to carry. Before we brand, there's something needs saying. He held up the jar. Inside, frozen creek water from January. This is what Victor Caldwell called a natural drought. Water from Silver Creek, January 15th, frozen solid. He set it on a table where everyone could see. Except Silver Creek never froze in 40 years, not till this winter, when someone built a dam 5 miles upstream. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ezra stepped forward, unfolding photographs. Here, Caldwell's Dam, built in December, canvas still new, rope still tarred, designed to choke the creek dry, force foreclosure, then blow come spring, make it look like natural flood destroyed the ranch. He tacked the photographs to a fence post. Men crowded close, studying them. That's a lie, Caldwell said, pushing forward. Those could be anywhere. They're 5 miles upstream on territorial land, Ezra interrupted, with dynamite crates from your warehouse. Still got the receipt if you want to see it. Caldwell's face darkened. Trespassing. Illegal evidence. It's a public waterway, Father Hennessy said mildly. No law against walking public land. Ruth stepped forward now, unfolded 2 deeds side by side on the table. Original, 1863, Silas Drummond's water rights to Silver Creek. See the signature? Heavy downstrokes where his war injury makes him press harder. She pointed. Now this one. The transfer dated 1876, different ink, different paper stock, wrong notary seal, shows the old registrar, but he'd been replaced by then. She looked up, meeting eyes around the circle. This is forgery. I stole the original from Caldwell's vault because he was going to destroy it. I risked my job, my reputation, because some things matter more than safety. The crowd pressed closer. Someone whispered, Jesus, he forged the whole thing? And there's more. Ruth pulled out the railroad contract. Union Pacific, dated March 1876, 1 month before Caldwell started foreclosure, payment of $15,000 upon acquisition of Silver Creek route. He planned this a year in advance, created drought, forged deeds, forced Silas off his land, all for a railroad payoff. The murmuring grew louder, angry now. Men who'd lost their own land to Caldwell's bank, who'd been foreclosed and forgotten, started moving forward. This is slander, Caldwell shouted. That woman's a thief. She broke into my bank. I did, Ruth said clearly, and I'd do it again, because theft's only theft when you're stealing what isn't yours. That deed belongs to Silas Drummond. Always has. Marshal Vickers stepped forward. The crowd quieted at the sight of his badge. Mr. Caldwell, he said, voice like gravel and iron. I'm Territorial Marshal Vickers. Father Hennessy invited me to observe land office irregularities. Looks like he understated the problem. Caldwell went pale. Marshal, these are wild accusations. They're documented accusations. Photographs, forged deeds, railroad contracts. Vickers picked up the evidence, examined it with professional thoroughness. I'll need to take statements. And, Mr. Caldwell, he looked up, you'll be coming with me to territorial court. Caldwell backed toward his horse. His hired men shifted, hands moving toward guns. I wouldn't, Vickers said quietly. I've got deputies at every road out of town. This is outrageous. I have rights. You have the right to a trial, where a jury will see this evidence. The marshal gestured to the table spread with proof, photographs, deeds, contracts, jar of ice, and testimony from Miss Nolan here about the ambush, the arrow wound, attempted murder to hide conspiracy. Nayland stepped forward, pulled aside her shirt collar, showing the scar. He shot me because I wouldn't tell him where my sister hid the original deed. Because I'm Apache, he thought I didn't matter. Thought no one would care. She looked around the circle. Ranchers, townspeople, families. But you're here. That means you care. That means witness matters more than power. Silence. Then someone started clapping. A rancher Silas didn't know. Then another, then more, until the sound rolled across the gathered crowd like thunder. Caldwell's hired men backed away, hands clear of weapons. Even they could read the moment. Marshal Vickers pulled handcuffs from his belt. The metallic click silenced the applause. Victor Caldwell, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, sabotage of territorial waterways, and conspiracy to commit murder. Caldwell lunged for his horse, made it 3 steps before Ezra's fist connected with his jaw. Solid, satisfying crack. The banker crumpled. Sorry, Marshal, Ezra said, shaking his knuckles. Slipped. Vickers almost smiled. Careful. Prisoners need to arrive intact for trial. He cuffed Caldwell while the man struggled. You can't do this. I have influence. The railroad. The railroad just canceled your contract, Victor. Vickers pulled a telegram from his vest. Arrived this morning, Union Pacific headquarters. They've been informed the land acquisition was fraudulent, contract void, no payment forthcoming. He unfolded the telegram, read aloud. Union Pacific does not conduct business with criminals. Contract with V. Caldwell terminated effective immediately. All legal liabilities his alone. Caldwell sagged in the handcuffs. That's not... The council will... Judge Carstairs... Judge Carstairs is currently under investigation himself, Vickers said calmly. Turns out Father Hennessy's letter was quite detailed, mentioned bribery, conflict of interest, obstruction of justice. He looked around the crowd. Funny thing about corruption, once you start pulling threads, whole cloth unravels. He hauled Caldwell to his feet. The banker's suit was dusty now, cigar broken, blood from Ezra's punch staining his collar. The town needs me, Caldwell said desperately. The bank, without me, you'll collapse. No one responded. Ruth stepped forward. Town meeting last week. Voted me interim bank president. Unanimous. She met his eyes. We'll manage fine without you, Victor. Deputies appeared. Men Vickers had positioned around the ranch earlier. They loaded Caldwell into a wagon. His hired men were cuffed separately, read charges of conspiracy and assault. As the wagon rolled away, Caldwell shouted through the bars, "This isn't over. I have lawyers, connections." His voice faded down the road. The crowd stood silent for a moment. Then someone, a rancher from the eastern spreads, said, "Well, are we going to brand these cattle or not?" Laughter broke the tension. Silas turned to Nayland, held out the branding iron. "You said this mark means protector who stands alone, but I'm not alone anymore." He pressed the iron into her hands. "You've earned this. Your family, your home." Nayland's eyes filled. She gripped the iron, heavy, cold, waiting 40 years to be used for the purpose it was made. Together then. Together. They walked to the fire. Ezra had the first calf ready. Bawling, kicking, held secure. Silas and Nayland pressed the iron to hide together. The D mark burned clean. Smoke rose, the calf was released, staggering to its mother. The crowd cheered. More cattle were brought. The branding continued. Rhythm of work, community effort, spring ritual restored. By afternoon, 50 calves bore the Drummond mark. The D that had waited 40 years now proclaimed itself across the herd, on healthy cattle drinking from a creek that ran full and free. Marshal Vickers left at sunset, wagon loaded with evidence and prisoners. "You'll need to testify at trial," he told Silas, "but it's a formality. This much proof, Caldwell's finished." Father Hennessy gave the blessing over the meal. "For water restored, for justice seen, for family found in unlikely places, we give thanks." "Amen," the crowd responded. They ate as stars appeared. Children played. Men told the story over and over. How Caldwell fell, how the evidence stacked, how one man standing led to a whole community rising. Nayland sat beside Silas on the porch steps, watching. The branding iron leaned between them, still warm. "She'd be proud," Nayland said. "Mary, of what you built, what you kept, what we kept." Silas looked at the iron, at the creek flowing silver in moonlight, at the people gathered on land that was still his, still home. "This was always bigger than me." Spring sounds, creek rushing, cattle lowing, distant laughter, the windmill turning smooth and purposeful. No groan, just song. Week later, town square bustling with mid-morning commerce. But something had shifted, lighter somehow, like a storm passing. Temporary town council met outside the land office, spring sun warming the wooden benches where they sat. Mayor Webb presided, but his authority looked diminished. The old certainties had cracked with the ice. "We need new bank leadership," he said. "Permanent appointment." Ruth Osborne, Father Hennessy's voice carried across the square. "She risked everything for truth. Folks trust her." Heads nodded. Ranchers, shopkeepers, women whose husbands had lost land to Caldwell's schemes. "All in favor?" Mayor Webb asked. Every hand rose. Ruth stood by the land office door, hand pressed to her mouth, tears on her cheeks. "I'm just a clerk," she said. "I don't know how to run a bank." "You know how to be honest," Ezra called out. "That's rarer than skill." Applause rippled through the gathered crowd. "Motion carries," Mayor Webb said. "Mrs. Osborne, the bank is yours to run as you see fit. On principle. No more foreclosures without fair review. No more exploitation." Ruth wiped her eyes, nodded. "First order of business. Every deed Caldwell handled gets reviewed. Any irregularities, we make them right." More applause. Ezra's nephew Tom limped forward, bandaged leg healing slow but steady. What about the land office? We need someone honest there, too. Tom Miller, Ruth said immediately. You risked your life showing us that dam. You've earned trust. Tom's young face flushed. Ma'am, I'm just... You're brave when it matters, she cut him off. That's the qualification. Vote passed unanimous. Silas stood at the edge of the gathering with Nalen, watching the town rebuild itself. Small changes, but foundations shifting towards something better. A man in an expensive suit approached, city clothes, not ranch-worn. He carried a leather portfolio. Mr. Drummond, I represent investment interests in Denver. We're very interested in Silver Creek land. Generous offer, more than fair market. Not for sale. But sir, with the railroad coming, the railroad can build around me, Silas's voice was flat, final. This land belonged to my wife. Now it belongs to my family. It stays that way. The man blinked, tried again. Mr. Drummond, I don't think you understand the opportunity. I understand perfectly. You want water rights I spent 40 years protecting. Answer's no. Nalen stepped forward. My brother said no. That means leave. The investor looked between them. Weathered rancher and Apache woman standing shoulder to shoulder, read the moment correctly, tipped his hat and walked away, confused but defeated. They'll keep coming, Nalen observed. Let them. Silas watched Silver Creek rushing past, full and clear. Some things aren't for sale at any price. Father Hennessy joined them, cassock dusty from the road. Heard from Marshal Vickers. Caldwell's trial is set for July. They want your testimony. I'll be there. Judge Carstairs is facing his own charges. Bribery, obstruction. Hennessy smiled. Seems your case opened several investigations. Territory's cleaning house. Townspeople were dispersing now, back to their business. But the quality of it had changed. Men met each other's eyes. Women spoke up in discussions. The silence of fear had broken. Will you stay for supper? Silas asked the priest. Can't. Got 3 more ranches on my circuit, but I'll be back for Sunday service. Hennessy gripped Silas's shoulder. You did good, son. Mary would be proud. He climbed into his wagon, rode off, trailing dust. Nalen and Silas walked back toward the ranch, spring grass tall along the road, wildflowers blooming in patches, purple lupine, yellow arrowleaf. What now? She asked. We ranch, we rebuild, we remember. Together? Together. The windmill came into view, turning steady in the wind. No groan, just the sound it was meant to make. Purposeful, enduring. Home. Late May. The garden at Mary's graveside had been planted. Silas and Nalen knelt in turned earth, spring sun warm on their backs. Seed packets spread between them. Mary's handwriting faded on the paper but still legible. Columbine, 1874, Prairie Rose, 1873, Wild Iris, 1872. She was planning for next spring, Nalen said softly. Always believed there'd be one. She always saw further than I did. They planted in silence. Columbine seeds scattered, covered with dark soil. Prairie Rose roots tucked careful into holes. Wild Iris bulbs pressed deep. The smell, rich earth, crushed grass, the green scent of growth. Silver Creek rushed nearby, its voice constant now. The sound Silas had lived with for 40 years, returned like a promise kept. When the last seed was planted, they watered from the spring-fed well. The same well where Nalen had hidden the original deed in its oilskin packet, safe all winter in water that never froze. Where water runs forever, Nalen quoted. She knew you'd understand eventually. Took me long enough. They walked back to the house. The branding iron hung above the door now. New tradition, protector's mark displayed. Every ranch hand who entered would see it and know. This family stood when others fled. Inside, coffee smelled strong and good. Bread cooling on the counter, Nalen's work. She'd learned baking from Ezra's wife, old recipes adapted to new hands. Through the window, cattle in the pasture, all bearing the D mark fresh on their hides. The herd had grown. Word spread that Drummond Ranch was hiring. Men came looking for honest work, fair wages. The ranch was rebuilding what winter had tried to break. Nalen poured coffee. They sat at the kitchen table, where so much had been decided over the past 5 months. What are you thinking? She asked. That I'm not alone anymore. He took the tin cup, same cup Mary had drunk from, same cup that had warmed his hands through winter. That family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's choice. Both, in our case. Both, he agreed. Outside, the first robin sang. Spring song, ancient and new. The windmill turned, catching light. Cattle lowed. Somewhere distant, a coyote yipped and another answered. The ranch sounds, home sounds. Nayland stood, moved to the window. Look. At Mary's grave, the first shoots breaking soil, green and tender, reaching for sun. Columbine, already growing. She's here, Nayland said. In this ground, in that creek, in you, in what we built. Silas joined her at the window, put his arm around her shoulder, brother and sister, family forged through winter and witness. In what we'll keep building, he said. The sun was setting, golden light across the valley, painting everything soft. Spring moved towards summer, the seasons turning as they always had, always would. But this year felt different. This year felt like beginning. The old-timers around Brennan Crossroads still talk about the winter of '77, the year Silver Creek froze, and a man learned what family truly meant. They'll tell you Silas Drummond was a stubborn fool, taking in a wounded Apache woman with 90 days left on his ranch. They'll say he should have bent, should have taken Caldwell's offer, should have known when he was beaten. But those same old-timers will also tell you about the spring that followed, how the thaw came late but strong, how a crooked banker went to territorial prison for 15 years, plenty of time to contemplate the difference between property and theft, how Ruth Osborne became the most honest banker Montana Territory ever saw, and how her fair lending helped a dozen families keep their land, how Ezra's nephew Tom reformed the land office, catching 3 more forgery schemes before they could ruin good people, how Father Hennessy's circuit stayed put because, as he said, this town finally learned conscience. And they'll tell you about the spring branding that became annual tradition, whole territory invited, free beef, and witness both. Every May, ranchers and townspeople gather at the Drummond place to mark new calves and remember what it costs to keep water running free. Silas lived another 20 years, died peaceful in his sleep with Nayland reading to him from Mary's letters. When they buried him beside his wife, Naleen inherited the ranch. First Apache woman to legally own territorial land under her own name. She ran it fair, taught her nieces and nephews both the old ways and the new, kept that branding iron polished above the door. Some lessons come hard, through winter and wound, through corruption faced and dignity defended. But once learned, they sink deep as spring roots, the kind that hold through any drought. Water runs forever, the saying goes, not because it never freezes, but because it always thaws. And family? True family endures the same way. By God's mercy in a hard winter, that's gospel truth.